Everyone, welcome to another HMS Psyche virtual training session. People are still coming in. I'll try to admit them as they come, but I will get started on the technical side of things here, and then we'll get going. Logistical items, as always. We'll start off with everybody on mute, and then at the end of the presentation, I will allow people to unmute themselves, and you can fire any questions off that you have, or you can put the questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. We have 40 minutes today, and I have a brief presentation to begin with, and then I'll take a question and answer. Hopefully, all of this works nice and smoothly. So let's get started. So today we are going to be talking about identifying sailing rigs, and the reason that I'm doing this is because we often post the game Name That Rig, and I get a lot of interesting answers, some of which are correct and some of which aren't. And the hope here is to get people started on the path of being able to identify different kind of sailing rigs on their own and getting some resources into your hands so that you can do this. And historically, why would you want to know what a sailing rig is? Well, if you're up in the masthead or in the bows and you see a vessel off in the distance on the horizon, you have to report to the quarterdeck what you're seeing. You can say sail to leeward, and yeah, that tells you there's a vessel out there, but it doesn't tell you what kind of vessel. It doesn't tell you if it's big or small, a merchant vessel or an armed vessel, privateer, warship, or anything like that. It could be a potential threat if you're a smaller vessel, and you need to know as soon as possible whether you need to turn tail and run, or in good British fashion, beat to quarters. So what are we looking for when we're up at the masthead and we're trying to determine what we're seeing on the horizon? So there's a vessel on the horizon, and you can see a shape, and it'll start to become clear as it gets closer to you. But the things that you're looking for might include the number of masts, the shape of the sails, whether they're square or whether they're front to back or triangular, and what their orientation are. What is the hull form that you're seeing? Whether the vessel is to windward or leeward relative to your vessel. You can tell that by the direction of the wind on your vessel and then where the other vessel is. Or you can also look at their sails and see which direction their sails are what tack they're on. And then, of course, what their heading is. And if their heading is towards you, either stand by to receive a packet or to receive fire. So these are the different things that we're looking for, and you can tell them all on this particular image. We've got 3 masts on this vessel here. They're all square sails. It looks like there's one gun deck that's fairly clear. The direction of the wind appears to be that this vessel would be to windward of us, and it's heading whatever compass direction relative to you. We don't have a compass in front of us, so we'll have to go with, say, southeast. So that means we've got a square rigger here, and because of the gun ports and the single deck, it's probably a frigate. And so we've got 3 masts. Oops. 3 masts, square rigged, ship rigged in this particular case, with a single wide deck of guns, one row of gun ports, and it's to windward and bearing southeast. So you might report that down to the deck so that the captain or acting lieutenant might want to know what's going on. Another type of vessel that you might see, a category of vessels, is fore and aft rigs. These would be any vessel where the sails are parallel to the keel. The keel is the bottom, the center of the bottom of the ship, running all the way down. It's the spine of the vessel. So if the sails are oriented parallel to that, you've got a fore and aft rigged vessel. In this case, we see 2 masts. It's fore and aft rigged. There's no square sails on it because all of the sails are, again, fore and aft and not perpendicular to the keel. It has a very narrow beam. There's no gun ports. It's probably a merchant schooner, and it's to windward and it's bearing north. And then you've got a very confusing category of hybrid type vessels that can include topsail schooners, such as this one, the HMS Pickle, or you might have a topsail cutter or something like that. Here we can see just barely, there's two masts there. You can see the second mast is just behind the square sail. And we've got a very narrow beam, but there's also one row of gun ports here. So this is a naval topsail schooner. It's to windward and it's bearing, in this case, west-southwest towards us. And then you've got your lateen rigs, typically found in the Mediterranean and Caribbean and Red Sea. These are really good in light winds. You might encounter them off the coast of France or Spain or Italy. And they're triangular in shape, very ancient design, very interesting to handle, and typically come with some very sharp bow and very narrow hull forms, very reminiscent of the ancient galleys, because these ships typically also have a set of oars. You don't see it on this one, but in this case, since we have three masts, it's lateen rigged, and there's a significant rake in the forward mast, meaning it's bent forward. You've got a Xebec or Chebec or Chebec. There's about 100 different pronunciations of this. This is actually my favorite vessel. But you can tell on the horizon, this is what you've got. And in our time period, you might not know if this was a Corsair vessel from Algeria, or it might be just a merchant vessel from Italy. It was quite common, very well used, and an excellent sailor. So you'd have to be very much on your guard when you saw something like this in the Mediterranean, because you don't know which way it's going to go until you see the flag. And in this case, we've got, I believe, a Spanish flag. And then you've got some peculiarities. So we talked about square-rigged vessels, square-rigged ships. We talked about fore and aft-rigged ships. We talked about some of the hybrids, but there's some interesting distinctions between different types of vessels. So here, we've got a brig and a snow. They look virtually identical. If the snow were to set its sails at a distance, you probably could not tell the difference between a brig and a snow. But if you can look very carefully at the snow, there is a second mast behind the main mast. It's almost directly up against the main mast, and that's supporting the spanker sail or the driver at the stern there. And then brig versus brigantine. What's the difference here? Well, a brig has square sails on both masts. A brigantine does not have square sails on the main mast. It's a fore and aft rigged main mast and a square foremast. So here we've got St. Lawrence II, one of the brigantines that we all know and love. And you can see the difference. There's no square sails there. Then you've got a topsail schooner versus a brigantine. Well, what's the difference here? It's almost indiscernible. Well, the difference between a topsail schooner and a brigantine is that the square sail on a topsail schooner is usually glued to a yard, meaning that the bottom is attached to a pole that is perpendicular to the mast, whereas a brigantine typically has an open sheeted mast, or open sheeted foresail, sorry. So you can see here, this sail does not have a yard attached to it, and it is in fact linked up to a block and a sheet. So brigantine and barkantine now. The only difference is a barkantine has three masts, two of which are fore and aft rigged, and the first one is square rigged. And then we've got the bark or bark versus a barkantine. And the big difference here is a bark is essentially a square-rigged, ship-rigged vessel without square sails on the mizzen. So the main mast is rigged with square sails, the foremast is square sails, and the mizzen is a fore and aft rig. There are no square sails on the mizzen on a bark. So there's the bark versus the ship, and we can see on the ship-rigged vessel, there is a square set of sails here, and there are no square sails here. And then you've got a whole host of smaller, interesting rigs all across the world, all kinds of different rigs, but we try to focus on some of the European and American vessels here because that's what we're more likely to encounter in the Atlantic and the Great Lakes. Really interesting, some of these vessels, a cutter may look like a topsail schooner if she's bearing down on you, because you may not see the second mast, or that there is no second mast. And a spritsail barge is interesting because of there's actually a yard that runs diagonally from the base of the mast up to the corner here, and that's exactly how Psyche is rigged. Not to be confused with the tartan here, which has a triangular lateen sail. And then, of course, the ketch is always interesting. It's basically a ship-rigged vessel without the foremast. Often they've removed the foremast to insert a 15-inch mortar or some other large piece of artillery. These were often used as bomb vessels to bombard enemy fortifications in the mid-18th century, and then later on towards 1812, the ketch-rigged bomb ketch was replaced with the bomb ship, where they just simply stuck the mortar in the weather deck amidships, and that's actually how we get the Terror from the Franklin expedition. The Terror was a bombed ship. And then, of course, luggers using these lug sails look like square-rigged sails if they're oriented on a run where the wind is at the back of the ship. A lug sail might look like a square-rigged vessel, but then as soon as she turns anywhere off the wind, these sails become fore and aft sails, and they'll look like that. And the lug rig is also quite common in smaller vessels, and often used for the Royal Canadian whalers that we all know and love. So I've got a little test for you guys. I hope you're ready. I hope you've done your research. I'm going to briefly pause here so I can allow you to unmute yourselves. So if you think you are up for this, unmute yourself now and get ready to fire off your answer to these questions. All right, here we go. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Scream it out. Oh, okay, hold on a second. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. I double clicked it. There, you should be able to unmute yourselves now. All right, let's try that again.
That's better.
Show us the image again, please.
All right, going again. Scream it out.
I'd say that's a ship.
It's a ship. Yeah.
Masted square rigger.
Indeed, and in fact, I'm
But
trying to purposely fool you guys on this because I'm showing the vessels down rigged or with the sails.
Yeah.
In
She's
this,
just under four and
You're
stable
evil.
with a spanker.
You're
Okay.
evil.
oh, of course.
Well,
This is HM Bark Endeavor, and
Right.
if you know the history, it's really interesting. They classified her as a bark so that Captain Cook, who was not at the time actually a captain, could be given command of her because of his rank at the time. He was not able to command an actual ship. So they assigned this vessel the classification of bark, even though it was not rigged as a bark, so that he could take command of her.
Was she a collier? Because she's really blunt bow.
She was.
Yeah, I believe she started life as a collier brig, which is they would literally drive them up to the shores of Whitby, fill them with coal, and then they'd float up on the tide and then sail down to London with their loads and then unload the coal there.
big sister of Chatham.
Yes. All right, you guys ready for the next one?
Ryan, before you go into the next one, is there anyone waiting in the waiting room?
No, not that I see.
Okay, all right. Number 2.
Number 2.
Brig.
Topsail schooner.
Oh, yeah, right.
Topsail schooner with a
Topsail Schooner, yeah.
Topsail Schooner indeed. Does anyone
Pride
know
of Baltimore?
which one this is?
Is that the
Pride
Pride of
two.
Baltimore?
It is. We've been fired
Ah.
upon her girth.
Oh, no.
Yes, we did.
Did? Where? Discovery Harbor?
Yeah, up
Yep, Midland Bay.
Yep.
I've stood on her bloody quarterdeck.
For the after-action report, Girth, for the purposes of the after-action report, we actually took this vessel.
Yay! Huzzah!
Unlikely.
Those are Marines.
Oh.
Luggers.
They're luggers, aren't they? With a dipping lug rig?
Indeed. These would be very common on the French coast, near opposite Cornwall. These Loo luggers, as they're called, come out of Brittany, and they would alternate between fishing and smuggling. All right, number 4.
Yawls?
Sorry?
Were they yawls?
Nope, they're lug rigs.
Okay, so they're lug rigged, but they have the mainmast, and then they have the mizzen and the stern, which would okay. I would say that would be a yawl if it was looking at it rig wise. A lug yawl.
All right, name that rig.
Bodie McBodie.
Bodie McBoatface.
What goose?
So every once in a while, we try to have a little bit of fun with this. All
Are
right,
you doing Psycho?
the last and final one for all the Psyche points.
Well, which one?
The
How
one in
about
the
the one in the
foreground.
foreground, which is at the Spritzel rig? Is it a Spritzel sloop? I can't see if there's a bowsprit on it.
Oops. I would say, Tom, that you're about as close as you're going to get. This is an image of a series of fishing smacks off the coast of Holland. So you've got a square rigged here, similar to a bus, and then you've got 2 Spritzel rigs, which were quite common on that side of Europe. But it always interests me how ancient the Spritzel rig is. And again, this is how Psyche is rigged up. It's the same arrangement right here. This long pole that goes from the base of the mast all the way up, and it's held to the mast by something called a snotter.
Not to be confused with your midshipman, who is a snotty.
That's right.
Exactly.
Now, some real advantages to that rig, including being able to instantly braille it up and take all the drive off of it with just one tug on a rope. It's really a very effective rig.
It is. We do enjoy that ability, but we also suffer from an inability to get the sail high enough up to catch some of the winds that are a little bit higher than the boat. And we often find that on our boat, the sprit sail is sort of just below the good wind, and we just kind of sit there a lot. But anyways, yeah, very, very interesting rig to work with nonetheless.
Is that a factor of the cut of the head? Is the angle of the head sort of square?
So this is sort of almost a trapezoidal sail. It's sort of square from the tack to the foot, and then it's angled up to the top of the yard, and then squared back down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're sure cool though.
Absolutely. So where do we learn more about these things? These are my 2 favorite books on the subject. They're very accessible and easy to read, and they're a great resource on all kinds of sailing ships through history, not just our time period. So they're going to cover you off quite well. I think they're available from time to time on Amazon, but somewhat difficult to find. But highly recommend it. Or next time we see you, maybe I can bring them out and you can have a look. All right. Well, now I'm going to just open up for questions.
Ryan, I thought I heard that you were, or I thought I might have read that you were thinking of changing Psyche to a gaff rig.
A lug rig is what we're targeting right now, just to try to get the sails, more of the sails higher up. And it has similar advantages to the Spritzel rig. The Spritzel rig we can braille up fairly quickly, but the lug rig is actually better you can just drop the whole thing, and you don't have to worry about the sail bagging up when it gets pulled into the mast. When we operate the Spritzel, yes, we can pull the brailing line in, and it if this is the mast and this is the sprit just goes like this, parallels the mast, and brings the whole sail with it.
Like that.
But it creates a bag around the sprit, and,
Right.
and so you're not really taking all of the drive off the sail, or you're losing control of the sail. Whereas with a lug,
You have to wrap it up
Drop the
really
whole thing.
fast.
yeah, and when
Right.
we're standing on a pitching boat, it's not as easy as it sounds. So we've been doing that for 3 years, and
I know.
it's all right, but I think for historical purposes and for just ease of operating the rig, we're going to go towards a lug rig.
Question, and this is an open question to everyone. What do you believe is the most efficient rigging for fastest sailing aboard a vessel?
I've got some opinions on this, but I'll let the group answer if anyone else has an opinion.
A fast rig, no idea.
I believe there are two answers to that question personally. If you've got anything in a favorable wind, a square rigged vessel is probably your best bet. It is also a better rig in a fight because you can do things like back your sails with it. However, if you are coming up close on the wind, you're better off with a fore and aft rig like a Xebec or a schooner, where you can actually get wind a whole lot closer to the wind.
I would say the best rig would be the one that the crew is best trained to use and put to advantage.
Good point.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
I think
guess a lot of it depends also on how many crew you have. Because I remember reading that schooners, especially merchant schooners, did not need as many crew members as compared to a square rigger.
absolutely.
It was actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Girth, because there was a conversation, I believe it was on Facebook just not too long ago, between a couple of my crew members from the Provincial Marine and a couple from other groups, where somebody brought up that whole old bit about, hey, if I won the lottery. And one of my guys said, well, we'd rebuild the General Hunter. And I jumped in and said, no, we wouldn't, because we don't have enough people to man the General Hunter. We'd rebuild one of the 2 schooners that was down here, because 5 of us can sail it.
The Nancy. Yeah.
Nah, she's up a little further up the coast.
But she was
Besides, she's
originally built at Moy Hall in Sandwich.
Yes, she was. And she did sail from here up through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points. My thought would be, look at the history, look at what the uses became or what the rigs became associated with. And if you look at the lug rig, it was used by smugglers trying to escape the excise, trying to deliver their cargoes as fast as possible. I'd say that's probably one of your more efficient rigs right there, because it easily converts from square to fore and aft. It can be operated with a small crew, and it's fast. Having sailed on Greyhound, which was the lugger that I actually had the picture of there, even in the lightest wind, that thing was just flying along. So from my perspective, something like that, or again, the Xebec, which was notoriously fast. If you're looking for speed, and speed is your metric for efficiency, I would posit that those types of vessels would be the most efficient.
Well, of course,
Answering-
here in Canada, when we talk about fast boats, we usually talk about the Blue Nose. There's her schooner for you.
Yep.
Mhm. Answering Bruce's question regarding, or comment regarding, they should rebuild the St. Lawrence. She had a crew of 800. That would be everybody within several yachting clubs to be able to staff or crew aboard ship. And I'm sorry, I can't supply that much food or that much grog for 800 people.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm just starting to talk to Lamb's Navy Rum again to try and get some more rum. Or press the Sea Cadet. Are you a Sea Cadet, Bruce? If you are, super. But right behind me is, well, that way, that is the Brigantine, the sail training Brigantine Playfair. And so, yeah, no, it'd be fascinating to have a larger vessel on the Great Lakes, but just the cost of building and maintenance these days, you'd have to, well, from Mr. Kidd's comments regarding, if someone won the lottery, you would have to win the Super Bowl lottery in the States to be able to build and maintain and crew the St. Lawrence.
It's a
Hundreds.
fantasy, right?
Yeah.
If money was no object.
And there's no dock big enough for her. She'd be moored somewhere out there. So
Well, it should be recalled that she had 100 guns as well, and I don't think we're really interested in manning 100 guns. So
The
that could be a
Confiance,
big factor of 800 men had to do with actually having to serve 100 guns.
what was the Royal Navy flagship at the Battle of Plattsburgh?
That was the Confiance,
Confiance, yes. There.
37 gun frigate.
There you go, gentlemen. I'm sure you could do that.
Managing
Yes,
expectations.
That only needs about 270 men.
Again, that's a lot of guns to man.
Work with him.
yeah.
So
No,
we
this
all know and love our square riggers, and that's traditionally what was built in the War of 1812. That and schooners. We know that a series of other gunboats were built on the Great Lakes and on Lake Champlain using lateen rigs, but I haven't seen anyone do any reenacting with one of those. So I'd be curious personally to find some old jib from a modern Marconi rig and rig it up like a lateen vessel. See what happens there, and so stay tuned for that little thought.
Yeah, the crewing you have to be really careful with, because the Blue Nose can sail with less than 10 men. However, when she was on the fishing ground, she had 30. Just because most of them were fishers. They were the guys who going out on the dories.
So, Mr. Boyd, did they have much in the way of mechanical advantage to hoist and lower the great booms, the great gaffs rather, or was it all manpower? Because I mean, today we've got electric winches and stuff.
Okay, the two, as she was built originally, was manpower. Within a couple years, we had managed to put, since I included it, they looked manual, but damn it, they were mechanical.
Right.
We had power to them.
So
But originally it was all manpower.
Yeah, my thought was that 30 men might be necessary to, I mean, those are massive sails. 30 men might be necessary to haul up the great gaffs on the two main.
It's actually not that hard. I've done it with several. It's a very, very good rig to work with. And I can tell you those, the Nova Scotian captains use technology. They had up-to-date pulley blocks and that, and they got replaced.
Okay. Thank you.
Just so you know, my family history, I crewed on the two. My father crewed on the original. My grandfather financed it.
Wow.
He used to finance Angus Walters to run the vessel to the fishing grounds every year.
That's incredible.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And just a dumb question. What is the exact rig of the Blue Nose? Because a lot of people get this one wrong.
He's a 4.5 gaff rig schooner.
She's a 3-masted stump schooner.
Three-masted stump schooner. Okay, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah.
If you look at the 3 quote jibs, as most people, it's a flying or topsail top jib,
Right.
the regular jib, and the next one closest to what everybody thinks is the first mast is a foresail that has a boom attached to a stump mast. And most people, unless you've actually gone aboard, have no clue that she's a stump mast schooner.
It's like a stanchion in the bows that connects the jib boom. Is that?
No,
what you
it's
described?
literally a mast that's cut off at about 3 feet. And it's attached to it. It's something that's very common to the Nova Scotian sailing schooners of the time.
I think the Commodore is showing off his version of it.
I missed the reference to the stump mast. I'm looking for it here.
A lot of them don't put it on because most people don't realize it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Well, look at Blue Nose 2. The current one was not made according to plan.
They have to look at
They
Blue-
would
the
not.
original.
They would not pay the family of the original designer for the rights of the plans because it's within the 75-year copyright.
Any word on whether they're following properly on 4?
There's a lot. That's family politics when it gets down to it.
Oh, that good, eh?
It's the Walters. Yes, I have a war with the current master, Donald Walters. He also managed to tie up the Blue Nose 2 in such a way with the hurricane coming that she swung around and snapped her spars, her bowsprit. So you can imagine there's a lot going on down there. That's part of the mess.
Part of the history, the tradition of shipbuilding.
Yeah. Those of you who haven't seen it, the Royal Canadian Mint has put out a number of coins for the Blue Nose because she's 100 years old as of March 26th.
Yeah, they have a special one where it's kind of showing the blueprints of her.
Yeah. There's one with the blueprints. There's another one that you see the lines from the bow. And if you look at the back of them, it's not Her Majesty. It's King George.
When she was first launched.
Yeah. So interesting ones. And that includes her dime, apparently. I haven't seen the new dime. No one had those changed now.
I have a quiz for everyone. See if you can recognize this rig that I'm building aboard my boat. Big surprise to everyone except maybe the Commodore. Name that rig.
Lateen rig galley.
Galley.
Yeah. So yes, it's been 3 years I've been working on this model of an American gunboat from the War of 1812.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll have it completed sooner than later.
That's a perfect example of lateen rigs on the Great Lakes. Exactly that. And I'd love to experiment with something like that.
Yeah, it looks like something you'd see in the Mediterranean, and they were in the Caribbean and on the lakes as well. It's a very effective rig in its way.
And it needed 32 people to row.
I'm not volunteering. I have epaulets for a reason.
That's right. You'd be at the stern.
All right. We've got 3 minutes left here. Does anyone have any final questions about sailing rigs in general? All right. Well, I'll leave it at that then. Thank you all very much for joining me for another HMS Psyche virtual training. We'll post this video in a week's time on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit our website and our Facebook group. And as always, stay safe, stay sane, and maintain a positive psyche.
Ooh. Ooh. I'll drink to
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Good night.